Joshua and Letitia are the two most legendary myths in the legal world. He is in City N, handling criminal cases with an undefeated record. She is in City B, winning every civil case she takes on. The industry says they are one in the south, one in the north, kings who never meet. But what they didn't know was, as early as 3 years ago, Letitia had secretly married Joshua while concealing her true identity. She chose to be his docile wife, cooking soup for him, accompanying him to social events, and keeping the light on for him. But now, she no longer wanted to keep up the act. Letitia stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, her fingers hovering over the phone screen for 3 seconds before finally dialing the number that had been untouched for 3 years. Vivian, Fabian's shocked voice came through the phone. "Am I dreaming? I'm coming back." Her voice was soft, yet it cut through the long stagnant air like a knife. "You're serious?" Fabian's coffee cup slammed onto the floor, his voice trembling with excitement. "This is incredible. Do you know how much Joshua has been crushing our law firm these years? After you left, he snatched 20 major criminal cases from us, one after another. For 3 years, we've been suffocating under his pressure. All these years, countless people have been lining up waiting for you to take cases. If news of your comeback gets out, the entire legal circle would be shaken." Letitia looked up, gazing at her reflection in the glass. Her long hair fell gently over her shoulders, dressed in a beige loungewear, with oil stains from tonight's soup still splattered on her apron. In this state, no one would ever guess she was once the queen of criminal cases who drove her courtroom opponents to the brink of collapse. "By the way, all these years, Joshua, does he know your identity?" He doesn't need to know. I've already decided to divorce him." Letitia cut him off. "Next time we meet, it'll only be in court." After hanging up the phone, Letitia was about to turn back to her room when her phone vibrated again. A message from Joshua. "Had too much at the business dinner, come pick me up." Letitia stared at this message for a long time. 3 years had passed, yet he remained the same every time he spoke to her. It was as brief as a superior giving orders to a subordinate. Night banquet club, VIP private room. Letitia was about to push the door open when she heard a burst of raucous laughter from inside. "Joshua, how many consecutive wins is this now? You're practically invincible. Is there any case in the legal world you can't handle? Honestly, everyone else seems like your defeated opponents." "Not quite," someone chimed in. There used to be Vivian who could rival him. But sadly, she suddenly retired 3 years ago and vanished without a trace. Probably got married. It's been 3 years. She likely even has kids by now and won't be making a comeback. Ha ha ha. Not necessarily. Joshua has been married for 3 years too, yet there's no sign of kids. He's buried in the law firm every day, barely even going home. Speaking of which, after all these 3 years, are you still not interested in Letitia? Do you even need to ask? Joshua hates nothing more than Letitia's gentle, virtuous wife and mother type. Back then, if she hadn't taken advantage of Joshua being drunk to climb into his bed, how could he have married her? Joshua prefers independent, strong women who are his equals, like Jennifer. It's been so many years, yet Joshua still can't forget her. Hearing the name Jennifer, Letitia's eyes darkened slightly as she pushed the door open without hesitation. The entire private room instantly fell silent. With everyone exchanging uneasy glances, Letitia ignored them all, scanning the room until her eyes landed on Joshua, who was already heavily drunk, leaning back on the sofa with his eyes closed. His handsome, aloof features were rendered indistinct by the dim lighting of the private room. She walked over and reached out to help him up, his arm draped over her shoulder, the weight making her stagger slightly. The familiar scent of fur mixed with alcohol hit her, leaving her momentarily dazed. The last time they had been this close was on that absurd night 3 years ago. "Just as I stuffed this person into the back seat," he suddenly grabbed Letitia's wrist and pulled her into his embrace. A warm sensation touched her lips. She froze. 3 years of marriage. And apart from that one accident, he had never kissed her, until he murmured a name vaguely, Jennifer. So, he had mistaken her for someone else. Letitia felt a sharp pain in her heart, gazing deeply at the man before her. "Do you really like her that much?" Joshua didn't answer, only gripping the back of her head more tightly, kissing her almost fiercely, his fingers tangled in her hair, as if trying to melt her into his very bones and blood. Scorching breath brushed against Letitia's face. With the car door firmly shut behind her, she had nowhere to retreat, only closing her eyes to endure. As the kiss ended, he murmured against her lips, still heavily intoxicated, "Don't leave me." Letitia slowly closed her eyes. And after a long while, she took out an agreement from the document folder and handed it to him. "If you don't want me to leave, then sign this agreement." Joshua looked at her with drunken eyes. Letitia knew exactly who he was seeing through her, but in the end, he still signed his name on the agreement. Joshua, once we get through the 1-month cooling-off period and obtain the divorce certificate, we'll both be free. Letitia let out a self-deprecating laugh. Staring fixedly at the signed divorce agreement in her hand, her mind swirling with thoughts, the soft moonlight spilled in, and she suddenly remembered the scene when she first met Joshua. The first time she saw him was during an inter-provincial case. At that time, she had just won a major lawsuit, and the defendant had suffered a crushing defeat. As soon as she stepped out of the courthouse, that man rushed over and frantically grabbed her by the neck. A hand suddenly clamped onto the person's wrist with such force that the sound of bones cracking could be heard amidst the suffocating agony. Starting a fight at the courthouse entrance. Looking to add to your sentence. The icy voice scraped against her eardrums like a blade's edge. Letitia looked up and met a pair of pitch-black eyes. Her heart fluttered slightly. Later, she would come to know that the man who had rescued her was none other than her longtime unseen rival, Joshua. From then on, she began frequently traveling to City Inn for business. She had seen him reduce opponents to silence in the courtroom, and she had also seen him standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, smoking. She even began deliberately visiting the social clubs he frequented, but he never once recognized her, until that night, when she found a drunken Joshua in the bar. He gripped her wrist, his voice hoarse. Why did you have to leave? She didn't understand the meaning behind his words, but before she could ponder further, his kisses descended upon her like a sudden storm. That night, they shared a passionate spring breeze. The next morning, he stared at the bloodstains on the sheets and remained silent for a long time. I'll take responsibility for you. Let's get married. Letitia remained silent for a long while before nodding. Even quitting her job immediately and marrying him while concealing her identity as Vivian. After marriage, he remained extremely indifferent, rarely returning home and no longer sharing a bed with her. She thought it was just his innate personality, wholeheartedly believing her tenderness could warm his heart, until one day, she discovered that photo in his study. The girl in the photo wore a white dress, standing at the bridgehead of Cambridge, her smile dazzlingly bright. The line of words on the back pierced her heart like a knife. If I can't marry you, then it doesn't matter who I marry. Only later did she learn that it was his first love, the famous piano virtuoso, Jennifer. After graduation, Jennifer chose to pursue further studies abroad and broke up with him. All these years, he had never forgotten her. That night, the reason he got completely drunk was simply because he learned that Jennifer had a new relationship abroad. 3 years into their marriage, she had seen him frown at the birthday cake she made, watched him throw the carefully prepared dinner she made into the trash, and even witnessed him abandoning her on the highway during her period, making a reckless U-turn to pick up Jennifer upon hearing of her return to the country. At that moment, Letitia's heart completely died. She wasn't so shameless as to obsessively chase after a man who never had her in his heart, not to mention, his heart had long belonged to someone else. In that case, why shouldn't she revert to being Vivian and completely give him and Jennifer their happy ending? After putting the divorce agreement in her bag, she drove home. After Joshua was sent back to his room, she began packing her luggage overnight. Early the next morning, Joshua woke up with a hangover and saw piles of boxes scattered on the floor. At a glance, he frowned, his voice cold. What are you doing? Letitia paused briefly while folding clothes, then resumed tidying up after a moment. Just organizing some clothes. After marriage, such scenes became all too common. Joshua assumed she was doing household chores again and thought nothing of it. Getting up to wash up, after packing the last few items, Letitia put the box back in place and heard the doorbell ring. She wondered who could be visiting so early in the morning. Upon opening the door, she saw Jennifer, dressed in a white dress. She exuded an elegant aura, with a gentle smile on her face. Ah, you must be Joshua's wife. Right, hello, I'm an old acquaintance of his. Jennifer. Is he at home now? Letitia stared at her for a moment, nodded slightly, and stepped aside to let her in. Joshua happened to come out just then. When he saw her, his expression flickered slightly. Though his eyes held joy, his voice remained cool. What brings you here? Jennifer lowered her gaze and directly pulled out a document from her bag, handing it to him. Joshua, as you know, I came back to the country this time prepared for divorce, but my case is quite difficult, and few lawyers are willing to take it. Can you help me? Before the words had fully left his mouth, Joshua reached out and took the documents. Sure. With that, he immediately called the law firm's partners to have all his current cases reassigned. He intended to focus solely on this divorce case. The person on the other end of the line was utterly shocked. Joshua, Our firm handles criminal cases exclusively. Why would you suddenly take on a divorce case? Moreover, based on your summary of the situation, the parties involved simply cannot provide strong evidence to prove that their marital relationship has indeed broken down. Therefore, the court is very likely to dismiss the divorce petition. I suggest you advise your client to consult a civil law attorney. After all, specialization leads to better results. They would handle it more effectively. Let me be blunt. There's no need to tarnish your myth of a 100% success rate or lower your professional standing over a case that is highly likely to be lost. His words were full of persuasion, with an unmistakable emphasis on reputation and personal gain. To ensure Jennifer was also informed, the speakerphone was left on. She panicked a little after hearing this. Then maybe forget it, I'll go find another lawyer. Before she could finish, Joshua said decisively, no need. I'll take full responsibility for this case. You focus on preparing for the tour, don't overthink it. Watering the plants on the balcony, Letitia witnessed everything and heard the entire exchange. Based on her experience handling over 1,000 divorce cases, Jennifer had an 80% chance of losing the lawsuit. Joshua had never handled divorce cases before and had zero experience in this area. Even with his remarkable talent, he still needed to first familiarize himself with the relevant laws. This is very time-consuming. Moreover, this is an international divorce, involving the complex legal regulations between different states within the United States. No matter how capable he is, winning this lawsuit will be an uphill battle. Cases like this, laborious, thankless, mentally draining, and highly likely to fail, would never have been taken by the steady, rational Joshua of the past. And the reason he agreed so resolutely was simply because the one who wanted a divorce was Jennifer. It was just his unforgettable first love after all. Letitia withdrew her gaze, and for the next week, Joshua indeed put aside all his work, spending his days at home poring over various legal codes and case files. The study lamp burned through the night. Jennifer came by every day, claiming it was to check on the progress of the case. He knew her preferences well, brewing coffee before her arrival, making time to trim the stems and change the water for the flowers she brought as thanks. Even replacing the dim study light overnight after she casually mentioned it. As for Letitia's preference for tea or coffee, what plants grew at home, which lights were broken or drains clogged, the former Joshua had never paid any attention. Only when Jennifer was around did he finally shed the shell of an unapproachable genius lawyer, becoming real and warm, and all of this was a side of him Letitia had never seen before. Looking at this Joshua who was so familiar yet so strange before her, she smiled self-deprecatingly, said nothing, and quietly cleared away the belongings she wouldn't take with her. After throwing away the last box of clothes, she returned home only to hear him on the phone again. Joshua, I'm really not good at divorce cases. Why don't you ask your old rival Vivian? She's extremely experienced. She's handled hundreds if not thousands of divorce cases, winning every single one, and has extensive experience with international divorce litigation. Consulting her would definitely give you practical advice. Upon hearing this, Joshua pondered for a long time, perhaps too eager to ensure Jennifer could divorce smoothly. This usually proud man ultimately chose to have someone look up Vivian's contact information. After obtaining the number, he entered the digits and pressed the call button. The next second, Letitia's phone vibrated in her pocket. She took it out, looked at the flashing hubby on the screen, and didn't answer. The dial tone waiting for pickup echoed continuously through the living room via the speaker. After 8 consecutive calls went unanswered, Joshua frowned slightly at the sight. Jennifer picked up the coffee and handed it to him, softly comforting him. Maybe Vivian is busy and didn't answer the call. Let's try again later. Joshua nodded, but accidentally knocked over the coffee when hanging up the phone, soaking all the documents. The tissues on the table ran out. Jennifer was about to turn and get more when he called out to Letitia, asking her to bring new ones. Letitia picked up a pack and brought it over, only to see 8 missed call records on his phone screen, just a string of numbers, without any notes. So Joshua hadn't even saved her phone number. No wonder he didn't realize when he called earlier that the person he was looking for was right beside him. She smiled silently, got up, and went into the kitchen to make herself a simple breakfast. When she came out with the sandwich, she saw him making another call, and she still didn't answer. Joshua ran out of patience and got up to walk into the study. Probably changed the number. I'll go ask someone for City B Star Law Firm's contact details. Hearing this, Letitia's gaze froze. If he contacted her previous law firm, given their gossipy nature, they would surely spill all her secrets without hesitation. Not wanting him to know about those matters now, she turned her gaze toward Jennifer. Miss Jennifer, I happen to know a little about the questions you want to understand. In divorce proceedings in California, the plaintiff is required to provide. She briefly outlined the applicability of that law. Jennifer didn't quite understand and quickly called Joshua over. Letitia repeated it again. Joshua understood this time, but the look in his eyes held complex emotions as he gazed at her. How did you know all this? Letitia took a sip of milk. Her voice calm and faint. I graduated from the law department of S University 5 years ago. I came across a divorce case file that bore a striking resemblance to Miss Jennifer S. at that time. The plaintiff's appeal was also dismissed due to insufficient evidence. The lawyer exploited certain provisions in private international law. This case was Letitia's own work, so she analyzed it with ease and familiarity, effortlessly drawing on her knowledge. Watching her speak with such confidence, Joshua felt for the first time that she seemed quite different from the virtuous wife and loving mother he had imagined. For a moment, his heart stirred. And he felt the urge to ask about her past experiences for the first time, but now was not the time for such inquiries. With time pressing, he followed her suggestions and continued preparing the legal documents. Having resolved the trouble, Letitia didn't meddle further. She began reviewing cases from recent years, familiarizing herself with the amended legal provisions, preparing for her comeback. Days passed, and she busied herself with self-improvement, oblivious to the outside world. It wasn't until Joshua came to see her that she learned Jennifer had successfully divorced. Moreover, Jennifer wanted to thank her for her previous help by inviting Letitia to attend her piano recital. No need, it was nothing. Letitia casually declined and continued flipping through the book. Joshua walked over to her, still wanting to persuade her, when he accidentally noticed the name Vivian written on the spine of the book she was reading, and froze in surprise. You, like Vivian? Letitia followed his gaze and realized he had noticed her habit of marking books. She instinctively raised her hand to cover it and nodded along with his words. In the legal field, many indeed regard Vivian as an idol. Afraid he might press further, she changed the subject. I was just thinking of going out for some fresh air. What time is the recital? I'll change and head out right away. Fortunately, Joshua didn't seem inclined to ask further. He nodded and got into the car to wait for her. Upon arriving at the concert hall, Jennifer sent an assistant to escort them to the VIP section. Mr. Joshua, we meet again. Over these years, whenever Miss Jennifer has a performance, no matter where it is, you've always been there to support her, bringing a bouquet of flowers each time. Tulips, Jennifer's favorite. I used to think you were single, but it turns out you're married, and to such a gentle and beautiful wife. What a blessing. Letitia listened quietly, finally realizing that Joshua's frequent trips abroad weren't for business but to attend Jennifer's performances. She lowered her head, recalling how every time before his departure, she would carefully pack his luggage, prepare fresh clothes, and even pack plenty of snacks and pastries. Fearing he might not be used to the food, she hoped he would return soon, with work going smoothly and a safe journey. Little did she know, the one who had always occupied his thoughts was Jennifer. She smiled, mocking her own foolishness and sorrow. Fortunately, soon enough, he would be able to openly pursue the love of his heart, and she, too, would regain her freedom. In the VIP lounge, apart from Letitia and Joshua, there was also a couple with a young child. Once the performance began, everyone was immersed in the beautiful, crisp music. Even the 5-year-old child listened with rapt attention. After half of the pieces were performed, there was a 20-minute intermission. The child also let out their natural youthful energy, bouncing around excitedly in the private box, their tone brimming with enthusiasm. This sister is so amazing. She can play such difficult pieces so well. How does she do it? Mom, tell me about her story, please. The child's mother wasn't very familiar either, so she immediately opened Baidu and started reading aloud. Letitia got up to go to the bathroom. And when she returned, she heard Joshua's voice. The information on Baidu isn't accurate. In fact, she comes from a musical family and started practicing piano at the age of 2. She won first place in every competition she entered as a child, was admitted through special recommendation all the way, and is considered a once-in-a-century prodigy in the music department of F University, even before graduating. She was noticed by that world-renowned European piano master and taken in as his final disciple. His tone was light and casual, yet it carried an unmistakable note of admiration. The child listened with eyes shining brightly, tugging at his hand excitedly. Brother, how do you know this sister so well? Do you like her? Joshua's expression froze slightly, and he didn't speak anymore. The child's mother also noticed something was wrong and quickly took the child away. scolding them a few words. "Don't talk nonsense, your brother is already married." Letitia listened quietly, her fingers involuntarily curling into a tight ball. "What does it matter if you're married? Like is like, dislike is dislike." Joshua never lied. So his silence in response to the child's question was already an answer. After the second half of the performance ended, Jennifer reserved a restaurant, saying she wanted to properly thank Joshua and Letitia, just as they arrived at the entrance. Joshua and Jennifer ran into an old classmate. Not wanting to keep Letitia waiting, they asked the owner to take her to the private room first. The owner was very sociable and warmly struck up a conversation with her. "You're a friend of Mr. Joshua and Miss Jennifer, aren't you? They used to be regulars at our shop." "Don't be fooled by Mr. Joshua's usually cold expression. He's incredibly gentle with Miss Jennifer. When she craves crab, he peels it for her himself. If she gets tipsy and demands a piggyback ride, he'll carry her for 4 hours all the way down the mountain." But later, Miss Jennifer went abroad, and only Mr. Joshua kept coming, every time. He'd order a table full of Miss Jennifer's favorite dishes and sit alone until closing. Now that Miss Jennifer has returned, they'll probably get married soon, right? Hearing this, Letitia forced a stiff smile. Maybe, soon. Jennifer and Joshua also returned, as usual. He ordered a table full of dishes and then handed the menu to the waiter. After the dishes were served, he put on gloves to peel the crab and instinctively tried to place it in front of Jennifer. She paused for a moment, glanced at Letitia, and reminded him. "Letitia is visiting this shop for the first time. You should let her try it first." Joshua paused mid-air, then changed direction and handed it to Letitia. After marriage, Letitia was being taken care of by him like this for the first time, but it was because of Jennifer. She looked at the neatly stacked crab meat on the plate, her tone calm. "I'm allergic to seafood, so I can't eat crab." Joshua frowned. "You're allergic to seafood? Then why do you often cook fish and shrimp?" "Because you like them." The private room fell silent. Letitia completed the last sentence in her heart. "What I like, you've never cared about," seeing the atmosphere about to turn awkward. Jennifer quickly changed the subject to smooth things over. Joshua picked up on her cue, and the two of them chatted away on their own. Letitia remained silent, eating quietly like an invisible presence. The waiter brought over the Crucian carp soup, and a pair of children chasing and playing around ran over, accidentally knocking over the serving cart. A large basin of freshly prepared hot soup splashed directly onto Jennifer and Letitia, in the critical moment. Joshua instinctively pulled Jennifer into his arms. Letitia was drenched in the soup alone, her entire body enveloped in steam. Her skin was scalded a vivid red, with large yellow blisters rising up, a sight that was shocking to behold. A searing pain shot through her, bringing tears to her eyes. Joshua's pupils contracted slightly as he was about to step forward to check on her when he heard Jennifer let out a cry behind him. He immediately turned back and asked with concern, "What's wrong?" Jennifer's eyes reddened. "I accidentally got splashed by hot soup on my fingertip. It hurts so much." Hearing this, his expression changed slightly, and he immediately scooped her up in his arms, saying to Letitia, "You go to the hospital by yourself. Jennifer's hands are for playing the piano. They can't afford any damage." Without waiting for Letitia's response, he turned and strode away with her in his arms. Letitia watched his retreating figure. Unable to hold back the tears that welled up in her eyes, alone, covered in blisters, she made her way to the hospital. After the wound was treated, in the following days, Letitia continued to recuperate in the hospital. During the nurses' rounds, they would often chat about some hospital gossip. "I heard the VIP ward is occupied by a pianist, just a small burn on her fingertip, and her boyfriend was so heartbroken that he consulted many specialists. He personally accompanies her for dressing changes and follow-ups, and even feeds her water and meals, afraid that any mishap might ruin her career. Several times when I was on night duty, I saw him sitting by the hospital bed holding his girlfriend's hand, gently kissing the back of it, with such deep affection in his eyes that it was hard to look away. I heard he's a very impressive lawyer, and so handsome too. What a perfect match with the beautiful and gentle pianist." Letitia listened silently, her heart already numb, devoid of any ripples, because she was about to leave, because she had already let him go, so Joshua could love whomever he wanted. It no longer had anything to do with her. 3 days later, Letitia was discharged from the hospital and prepared to go home. Joshua unexpectedly waited for her at the door and took her luggage without being asked. "I'm on leave today, rare to have no work. Let me take you out for a stroll." Letitia was stunned for a moment. After so many years of marriage, Joshua had never taken the initiative to ask her out on a date. even when she had already planned the itinerary in advance, applied exquisite makeup, and chosen a restaurant to his taste, Joshua would still politely decline with excuses like being too busy with work or needing to work overtime or go on a business trip. She didn't know why he suddenly suggested going shopping today. Was it just a whim? Or did he feel guilty about abandoning her when she was injured at the restaurant that day and wanted to make it up to her? Would someone like this even feel guilt? Joshua didn't notice her emotional shift and took her to the mall, entering a jewelry store. He immediately took a liking to several diamond necklaces, had the salesperson bring them out, and had Letitia try each one on. The salesperson, all smiles, took them out and personally helped the customer try them on, continuously praising them. This gentleman has excellent taste. This heart of the ocean is the treasure of our store, and it looks particularly fitting around this lady's neck, perfectly complementing her elegance. Madam, you are truly fortunate to have such a doting husband who personally selects pieces for you. It seems the two of you must share a very harmonious relationship. Hearing their flattery, Joshua remained as indifferent as ever. Letitia lowered her gaze to the necklace around her neck. In the past, she would have been delighted to receive these gifts, but now, she only felt that buying them would be unnecessary. No need to buy them for me. I don't like jewelry. Joshua seemed not to hear her words. After selecting a necklace, he directly took out his card to pay. Only when the sales assistant finished packaging and brought it over did he glance back at her, his tone indifferent. I know you don't like it. But today is Jennifer's birthday, and this is my gift for her. I'm afraid something might go wrong, so I asked for your help to try it on. Hearing this, Letitia's heart trembled violently. So, the reason he took her out today wasn't out of guilt, but just to pick a more perfect gift for Jennifer. From beginning to end, she was merely a tool. Then, Joshua said Jennifer had also invited her to the birthday party and promptly took her to a private club. As soon as she pushed open the private room door and saw Jennifer, Joshua's usually indifferent face revealed a barely noticeable smile. He handed over the gift and wished her a happy birthday. Jennifer's close friends all gathered around, eagerly unwrapping the gift. Upon seeing that dazzling and exquisite gemstone necklace, several girls screamed in excitement. To gift such an expensive gemstone necklace without hesitation, Mr. Joshua, you're absolutely spoiling her. No wonder you two rank first on our F University's CP list as the most talked about campus couple. The group chattered away with praise, and even many old classmates were reminded of their youthful memories, eagerly joining the lively discussion. Do you remember when Jennifer sprained her ankle back then, and our Mr. Joshua carried her to classes and study sessions every day, after being spotted by many classmates and teased? It was the first time I'd ever seen the usually aloof campus heartthrob blush. There was a time when it became trendy at school for boys to knit scarves for their girlfriends, and we all received one. After a few subtle hints, Mr. Joshua stayed up all night following a tutorial and spent a whole week knitting one for Jennifer. What I remember most vividly is when a guy tried to pursue Jennifer, but after being rejected, he got angry and started spreading malicious rumors about Jennifer. Despite being a top student in law school, Mr. Joshua committed his first illegal act for Jennifer's sake. He went and fought that guy. It was so satisfying. The group of classmates grew more and more excited. Joshua, however, fell silent. Jennifer's expression darkened as she spoke up to interrupt them. All right, what's past is past. Stop talking nonsense. Today, Joshua's wife is also here. Don't let her misunderstand. For a moment, all eyes in the room turned to Letitia. Everyone looked embarrassed and quickly composed themselves, but some of Jennifer's roommates couldn't hold back and couldn't help but say, Mr. Joshua, what does your wife do to be noticed by someone as outstanding as you? She must be quite famous too. May we know which big shot she is? Joshua said in a flat tone. She doesn't have a job, just an ordinary housewife. Hearing this news, the private room erupted in an uproar. Many people simultaneously showed looks of disdain and contempt. Whispering among themselves, Mr. Joshua's ex-girlfriend was Jennifer, a graduate of a prestigious school and an internationally renowned piano prodigy. Joshua himself is now a leader in the industry. How could his standards for choosing a partner have fallen to such an ordinary level after just a few years? To put it nicely, she's a housewife. In reality, she's just a freeloader who achieves nothing and only wants to live a wealthy life relying on her husband. Letitia stood alone in the corner, listening to these taunts, and couldn't help but recall the days when she was a powerhouse in the professional world. Back then, a single case could earn her millions in commissions. Wherever she went, people would step aside and bow, and clients would line up to hire her for lawsuits. She willingly gave up her career for love, only to be seen as a freeloader in everyone's eyes. She curled the corner of her lips, feeling nothing but deep irony. Her sacrifice only moved herself. Joshua also overheard those whispers, but he offered no explanation, merely changing the subject with indifference. Everyone's here now, Jennifer. Didn't you say you wanted to play a game? The private room quickly became lively again as someone brought out a game spinner, and they started playing games. Joshua's full attention was on Jennifer, so he barely looked at his cards and lost the first round. The drawn punishment was to check the phone's photo album and memos. The classmates all rushed forward to take his phone. As soon as the photo album was opened, tens of thousands of saved photos appeared, each and every one related to Jennifer. Her youthful and adorable ID photos from her teenage years, the couple photos taken during their relationship, the daily life pictures she posted on social media after the breakup, every single photo was of Jennifer, and no one dared to scroll further. Quickly switching to the notes instead, the densely packed text meticulously recorded Jennifer's likes and dislikes, the sweet memories from their relationship, and the unbearable longing he couldn't express after the breakup. The love and pain that couldn't be concealed between the lines made everyone feel somewhat distressed, their gazes constantly shifting between Joshua and Jennifer. Jennifer also couldn't help but look at the drunken Joshua. An indescribable look of pain appearing between her brows, the room fell into an eerie atmosphere of oppressive tension. Having witnessed all this firsthand, Letitia felt her emotions in turmoil, no longer able to maintain a facade of indifference. She hurriedly got up and went to the bathroom, splashing her face with cold water. When she returned and was just at the door, she saw Joshua lose again, this time. The drawn punishment required him to call the love of his life and say some heartfelt words. He seemed drunk, yet he clearly heard the game rules, picked up his phone, and pressed a few buttons. Before long, Jennifer's phone rang inside the private room. As soon as she answered the call, Joshua stared straight at her, the corner of his lips twitching. At 18, I had nothing, but with the love of my life by my side, I felt like I owned the world. Now, though I may seem to have it all on the surface, I've lost the love of my youth, and everything around me feels empty. I have nothing. Watching him openly confess his raw love for Jennifer in front of everyone, Letitia couldn't help but laugh. Laughing through the tears that welled up in her eyes, she tilted her head back, refusing to let the tears fall, then turned and walked away in silence. After returning home, Letitia began sorting through the assets divided after the divorce. During the marriage, Joshua had earned a substantial amount of money, which counted as joint marital property. By law, she was entitled to half. However, she didn't take the houses or cars, only accepted the money, and decided to donate all of it to charity. During this time, Joshua never came back. No one knew what he was busy with. Instead, Jennifer gave her a call, wanting to meet up for a chat. The two met at a coffee shop and exchanged a few polite pleasantries. Jennifer apologized to her for what happened on her birthday. Miss Letitia, my friends had too much to drink that day and spoke out of turn. If they offended you in any way, I hope you can be magnanimous. Letitia pursed her lips. There won't be a next time. I'm leaving City Inn soon, and I won't dwell on such trivial matters. Upon hearing she was leaving, Jennifer showed an expression that was both surprised and pleased. Are you leaving? Is it because of me? I'm sorry. Joshua and I were indeed together before, but that was a long time ago. Letitia noticed the joy in her eyes and looked up directly at her. Miss Jennifer, may I ask if you've truly moved on? Even if you have, Joshua has never let go of you. Every night, he falls asleep with headphones on, listening to you play the piano. Every time he gets drunk, it's your name he calls out. Every year on your birthday, he buys a cake and sits in his study until late at night. Letitia paused. As these past events were recounted one by one, she suddenly felt utterly exhausted. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't find a way into his heart. The truth is, sincerity doesn't always beget sincerity. I'm tired. So I've decided to give up on this marriage. Jennifer was stunned, taking a long moment before speaking again to confirm. So, you're really getting a divorce from Joshua? Yes, the divorce agreement has been signed. Tomorrow is the last day of the cooling-off period. From then on, everything related to Joshua will have nothing to do with me. Letitia said these words openly and without hesitation, not bothering to look at her expression, and picked up her bag to leave. But as soon as she opened the door, a crowd of frenzied fans holding Jennifer light signs suddenly surged forward, as if trying to rush in. Her expression changed abruptly, and she quickly locked the door from the inside. Outside the private room, someone kept kicking the door. The two of them were trapped inside, unable to get out. Jennifer never expected to encounter so many fanatical fans at this moment. Helpless, she could only call Joshua to explain the situation and ask him to come help. He arrived quickly, pushing through the sea of people to reach the private room door, and was led into the room amid the chaos. He arrived in a hurry, his usually impeccably ironed suit slightly wrinkled. Jennifer, there are too many fans blocking the way outside. The only solution now is for you and Letitia to swap jackets. I'll take you away first. Jennifer, having experienced the relentless pursuit of obsessive fans before, immediately looked at Letitia with pleading eyes. Letitia felt a wave of desolation in her heart. He came up with a brilliant plan, flawlessly protecting his white moonlight. But did he ever consider what would become of her? She tugged at her lips in self-mockery, ultimately saying nothing, and simply took off her coat. After the two changed clothes, Joshua didn't even glance at Letitia before leaving with Jennifer. The private room door opened briefly for a moment, only to be quickly locked by Letitia. She was wearing Jennifer's clothes, quietly listening to the increasingly loud shouts outside. After waiting for a long time, the fans outside the door gradually lost their patience and forcefully kicked the private room door open. A crowd surged forward, pushing and pulling at Letitia from all sides. Her hat, mask, and sunglasses were quickly torn off. Upon realizing she wasn't Jennifer, the fans' ecstatic joy turned into furious betrayal, violently shoving Letitia to the ground while hurling vicious curses. Countless feet trampled and stomped over her body, leaving behind bruised and mottled wounds. Amid the chaos, she barely managed to protect her vital areas as excruciating pain tore through her entire body. In the suffocating haze, the oxygen in her chest gradually depleted until she felt herself choking. Just as distant, indignant screams pierced through the turmoil. Jennifer left here by car half an hour ago. Sis, we came for nothing. After realizing Jennifer wasn't here, the crowd instantly dispersed like receding tides. Only Letitia remained, covered in disarray, her heart filled with utter desolation. Struggling to her feet, she endured the pain and went to the hospital to treat her wounds. With only one final thought left in her mind, she was leaving the city, cutting all ties with Joshua completely. After returning home, Letitia booked a flight ticket to Port City. The airline called to confirm, and she answered, "Yes, I did purchase a ticket to City B, departing at 10 a.m. Before the words had even finished, Joshua pushed the door open and entered, hearing the conversation and asking a question. 10 in the morning, where are you going? Letitia focused her gaze, hung up the phone, and said calmly, going to meet some old friends. Friends? Joshua nodded indifferently and didn't press further. He took off his coat and looked up, pausing when he saw the injuries on her. You're hurt. Sorry. I didn't expect those fans to be so wild. Didn't expect it, or just don't care. Letitia smiled without saying a word. Seeing her silence, Joshua changed the subject. Come to think of it, you've stayed at home for too long. Whenever there's a chance to meet friends, you should go out more and broaden your horizons. After speaking, Jennifer sent a message just in time. Joshua took his phone and went into the study. Watching the door slowly close, Letitia gave a slight nod. After tomorrow, she would indeed go out to see the world and no longer confine herself. The next day, Letitia got up very early and retrieved her divorce certificate with the divorce agreement. Just as she returned home, she ran into Joshua at the doorstep, who happened to be heading out. She wanted to confess about the divorce to him and called out to stop him. Do you have time? There's something very important I need to talk to you about. Joshua glanced at his watch, his tone somewhat hurried. If it's important, we can talk when I get back tonight. I have something to attend to right now. In that case, there's no need to talk. This is what I wanted to give you. Letitia said as she took out the divorce certificate and handed it over. Joshua was looking down at his phone, replying to Jennifer's message. He casually took it without even glancing and tossed it into the entryway drawer. He picked up the car keys, turned around, and left without another word. Got it. Aren't you going to meet friends, have fun, and come back early? No, this time, she won't be coming back. Letitia watched him leave for the last time, answering him in her heart. She returned to the bedroom to get her luggage and walked out of the villa. As the gate closed behind her, she took a deep breath. The shackles of 3 years have finally been lifted. Joshua, goodbye. The next time they meet, she will no longer be his wife, but rather, his mortal enemy, Vivian. Joshua stood outside Jennifer's apartment building, holding a velvet box in his hand. Inside was the diamond necklace he had asked Letitia to help him pick out. The sunlight today was perfect, making the diamond pendant sparkle brilliantly. He stared at the pendant for a few seconds, suddenly recalling the look in Letitia's eyes, shifting from hope to disappointment and then to indifference. When he had said, "I know you don't like it, so I just needed your help to try it on," he tightened his grip on the box, his knuckles turning slightly white. "I'll buy her another one when I get back." He rang the doorbell. Jennifer, her eyes lit up when she opened the door, her smile radiant as if she had anticipated it all along. She was wearing a light-colored dress with her hair loosely tied up, looking gentle and harmless. "Joshua," she blinked. "What brings you here?" Joshua paused for a moment before finally saying, "Didn't we agree I'd accompany you to find inspiration today?" Jennifer nodded with an oblivious smile. Completely unaware of his inner turmoil, "I almost forgot. Wait for me. I'll just change my shoes." Joshua gripped the steering wheel as Jennifer's enthusiastic voice filled the car. Normally, he would patiently engage with her, but today, for some reason, his heart felt heavy, weighing him down until he could barely breathe. They went to the botanical garden on the outskirts of the city. The early autumn sunlight dappled the ground through the leaves. Jennifer walked beside him, occasionally pointing at a plant and softly explaining. She had minored in horticulture during college and spoke about these things with authority. Joshua gradually relaxed. At noon, they had lunch at the restaurant in the garden. Jennifer specially ordered his favorite dishes and also asked for a bottle of red wine. "You're in a bad mood today," she said as she poured him wine, her tone certain. Joshua looked up at her. "Is it that obvious? When you frown, there's a very faint line here." She reached out, her fingertips stopping an inch away from his forehead, then withdrew them casually. "It's been like this since college." He was slightly taken aback. After Jennifer said these words, his first thought was that Letitia had also said something similar. Joshua's hand tightened slightly, causing the knife and fork to slide on the plate, making a faint sound. Jennifer seemed not to hear it. In the afternoon, they went to see a movie, in the darkness. Jennifer's hand quietly covered his, her fingertips slightly cool. Joshua hesitated for a moment before gently returning the grasp. The necklace seemed to have absorbed his body warmth, yet the right moment to give it never came. By the time the movie ended, the sky had already darkened. Jennifer suggested going to a nearby bar for a drink. Joshua was still somewhat dazed and nodded in agreement absent-mindedly. In the bar's restroom, he splashed cold water on his face. When he looked up, his reflection in the mirror revealed an unreadable expression in his eyes. What was he doing? Today was supposed to be a rare date with Jennifer, yet his mind was completely occupied by thoughts of Letitia. This is insane. He wiped the water off his face and was about to push the door open when he heard Jennifer's voice not far away. She seemed to be on a phone call, her tone completely different from the gentleness she had shown earlier. "Don't worry, he knows nothing. Those fans did well. They should make Letitia taste the bitterness of online bullying. Yes, keep stirring it up. Make sure she doesn't even dare to step outside." Joshua's body stiffened, his blood gradually turning cold. As he stepped closer, Jennifer had just hung up the phone. Seeing him, her expression flickered with panic for a moment before quickly returning to normal. "Have you been waiting long?" she asked with a smile. Joshua stared at her, his voice low. "Those fans attacking Letitia, did you arrange that?" Jennifer's smile remained unchanged. "Joshua, what are you talking about?" "I heard it." He took a step forward, the atmosphere around him terrifyingly oppressive. "Those stalkers were arranged by you. Not only that, you even tried to incite online harassment against her. But Letitia has no grudge against you. She even contributed to your case. Why would you do this?" Jennifer's expression shifted, then she put on a look of grievance. "Joshua, you must have misheard. How could I possibly do such a thing?" "That's enough," he interrupted her, pulling the necklace from his pocket and placing it on the table. "We both need to cool off." Jennifer looked at him in disbelief. "Joshua, how can you not believe me? We've known each other for so long." As she spoke, she reached out to grab the hand of the person in front of her. Joshua turned and walked away. Returning home, the apartment was pitch black. He turned on the light and saw Letitia's slippers neatly placed by the door, and her coat was missing from the rack. She hadn't come back yet. Joshua stood in the empty living room, suddenly feeling exhausted. He turned off his phone, collapsed onto the sofa, and closed his eyes. Letitia arrived in City B on her first day and went straight to her former employer, Star Law Firm. The moment she pushed open the firm's door, all eyes turned to her. Familiar faces showed shock, and someone even dropped their coffee cup in surprise. Fabian practically rushed over, his voice trembling. "You're really back, after that phone call. You just disappeared. I really thought I was dreaming." Letitia smiled faintly, her gaze calm yet sharp. "After 3 years of silence, it's time for me to return." She gave herself no time to adjust, taking on a challenging cross-border commercial dispute case that very same day. A domestic tech company was facing a hostile takeover by overseas capital, involving a battle over billions in assets. The opposing side had hired a top-tier international legal team, and no one in the country dared to take the case. Yet she signed the representation agreement without hesitation. The trial begins in 3 days, she closed the file, her tone calm yet leaving no room for doubt. That's more than enough for me. On the day of the trial, the opposing legal team was brimming with confidence, convinced that this lawyer who had disappeared for 3 years was long past her prime. Yet, the moment Letitia spoke, the entire courtroom fell into silence. Her arguments were meticulously logical, her chain of evidence flawless, even anticipating every counterargument the opposition might raise, each time they attempted to rebut. She seized their weaknesses with pinpoint accuracy, delivering fatal blows. According to Article 37 of the International Commercial Law, the contract you provided contains obvious fraudulent clauses, and your agent deliberately concealed key information during the signing process, she said, her voice low but each word cutting like a knife. This is no longer just a commercial dispute, it falls under financial fraud. The opposing lawyer's face suddenly changed, and the judge's expression grew increasingly grave. In the end, Letitia won decisively. On her first day back, she silenced all doubts and rumors with undeniable professional competence. The moment she stepped out of the courtroom, the media swarmed around her. Under the incessant flashes of cameras, she stood on the courthouse steps, facing the lenses with a calm expression and resolute words, leaving only one statement: yes, Vivian is back, and this time, I won't back down. Meanwhile, in City N, Joshua returned home the next day and called out habitually, "Letitia." No one answered. Why hasn't she come back yet? He frowned, his brows furrowed with irritation. Walking toward the entrance, he suddenly noticed a dark red document lying in the open drawer. He casually picked it up and opened it. Divorce certificate. His pupils suddenly contracted, his fingers involuntarily tightening, crumpling the paper into creases. When he immediately took out his phone and dialed Letitia's number, only to hear a cold automated voice. "The subscriber you dialed cannot be reached for the moment." He dialed again, only to be met with the same indifferent mechanical voice. He scrolled through his contacts, trying to reach Letitia's friends, only to realize he hadn't even saved her number, let alone her friends. "Where are you?" A bright red exclamation mark caught his eye. Only then did he realize that over the past 3 years, he had never once initiated contact with her. Every conversation had been either Letitia reaching out to him first or him sending a brief message, and now, she had completely vanished. He had no way to contact Letitia anymore. Just as Joshua's mind was in complete chaos, Jennifer's phone call came through. "Joshua, I heard, you and Mrs. Letitia got divorced." Her voice remained gentle, but carried a hint of probing. Joshua remained silent for a moment before softly uttering an mm. Jennifer seemed to exhale in relief, her tone involuntarily lightening up. "Actually, ever since I returned to the country, I've been wanting to tell you that all these years, I've never forgotten about you." She paused, her voice tinged with shyness. "If you're willing, we could start over." Joshua froze. He once thought that the words he most wanted to hear in his life were Jennifer's, but now, the divorce papers still lay beside his hand, and the home before him was completely dark. In his ears, Jennifer's voice kept chattering, but at this moment, his mind was filled with images of Letitia. With a slight blink, those memories scattered. "Joshua, are you still listening?" "Jennifer, sorry, I'm not in the mood to talk about this right now." That was all he could manage to reply. That night, Joshua sat in his study, the computer screen displaying the latest updates from the Bar Association. Joshua stared blankly, his gaze fixed on empty space, lost in thought. His hand gripped the mouse, unmoving for a long while. Suddenly, a news notification popped up. Shocking, the Queen of Litigation Vivian, missing for 3 years, makes a grand comeback and crushes an international legal team in her first case. He clicked on the news, and a courtroom photo came into view. Joshua's breath suddenly stopped. This face, it was Letitia. His fingers uncontrollably zoomed in on the photo, staring fixedly at that familiar yet unfamiliar face. What's going on? Vivian is actually Letitia. She wasn't just a housewife. His mind went blank with shock, his lips still murmuring, "Impossible." Joshua's fingers hovered over the screen. The woman in the photo had sharp, knife-like brows and eyes, gradually overlapping with the memory of her bent-over, simmering soup. He suddenly recalled a certain late night, Letitia curled up on the sofa flipping through a copy of International Business Law. The memory grew clearer. The book's corner bore the name Vivian. He had always assumed it was just a book she borrowed, or perhaps a random note she'd scribbled. Joshua had never once considered the possibility that Letitia might be Vivian, but Letitia had once analyzed Jennifer's divorce case in front of him, delivering every word with precision, effortlessly discussing past cases and relevant legal provisions. He had once seen her flipping through stacks of hefty legal tomes, each marked in the corners with the notation Vivian. She had even mentioned the cross-border divorce case from 5 years ago in front of him, yet he had never probed deeper. She had always been right in front of him, yet he had never truly seen her. He had actually never truly seen the person who slept beside him. After a moment of stunned silence, Joshua suddenly stood up, grabbed his car keys, and rushed out. He had to find her. He absolutely had to find her and get answers. But as soon as he stepped out, his phone rang. It was the law firm's partner. Joshua, have you seen the news? Vivian is making a comeback. She's actually Letitia, my God. We even asked you to reach out to her for help before. Joshua's fingers tightened around the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. I know, he said hoarsely. I'm going to see her right now. The voice on the other end of the phone paused. Where are you going to look? Isn't she already? City B. He hung up the phone, stepped on the gas, and the car shot forward like an arrow released from a bow. Joshua arrived in City B late at night. He didn't go to the hotel, but drove straight to Star Law Firm. However, by the time he arrived, the building's lights had long been turned off. Standing at the foot of the building, he looked up at the dark windows, as if hoping to catch a glimpse of her figure. Letitia, Vivian. These two names intertwined repeatedly in his mind like a blunt knife, slowly chipping away at his sanity. He dialed the number of an old classmate from the City B Bar Association, his voice hoarse. Help me check the true identity of Vivian. The other person exclaimed in surprise. You didn't know, Vivian is Letitia. She suddenly retired 3 years ago for some reason and has now made a comeback. Wait, Letitia, isn't she your wife? The voice on the other end of the phone was filled with confusion and shock, while Joshua's fingers nearly crushed the phone. So, the whole world knew. Only he had been kept in the dark. Back at the hotel, Joshua sat on the edge of the bed, his head pounding. He scrolled through the few Letitia photos in his phone, mostly of her standing quietly in a corner or the back of her head as she cooked with bowed head. He had never seriously photographed her face, just as he had never seriously tried to understand her. Memories flooded in like a tide. She had once browsed legal texts in his study, with notes marked Vivian on the page margins. Yet he merely frowned and dismissed it as her just casually looking. When she analyzed Jennifer's divorce case, her reasoning was startlingly clear, yet he dismissed it as just an offhand remark. She even mentioned casually during a dinner once. I've handled similar cases before, but he didn't pay any attention at all. She never deliberately concealed it. He just never cared to notice. Suddenly, he felt a surge of irritation at Letitia's silence, irritation at his own willful deafness. Joshua violently hurled his phone against the wall, the sound of the screen shattering piercingly loud in the silent room. The next day, City B Intermediate Court. Letitia had just finished a court hearing and walked out of the courtroom with steady steps. She was dressed in a sharply tailored black suit, her long hair tied up high, her gaze as sharp as a blade, a far cry from the docile misses of the past 3 years. Letitia, a familiar voice called out from behind. She paused slightly in her steps but didn't turn around. Joshua strode forward and grabbed her wrist with such force that it made her frown slightly. Why didn't you tell me you're Vivian? His voice was hoarse, laced with suppressed anger. Letitia turned slowly, her gaze calm as she looked at him, a cold smile curling at the corner of her lips. Why should I tell you, Mr. Joshua? In 3 years of marriage, have you ever cared? You've always ignored me, never once asked me anything on your own, and now you're questioning why I kept it from you. Joshua felt his breath catch. Her eyes were too cold, as if looking at a stranger. The courthouse corridor buzzed with activity as numerous lawyers and journalists took notice of their standoff, quietly stopping to observe. Letitia gently withdrew her hand, adjusted her cuff, and spoke in an indifferent tone. Mr. Joshua, please behave with dignity. Right now, we're merely colleagues, and in the future, we may well be opponents. She slightly raised her eyes, her gaze icy, and the next time we meet will only be in court. With that, she turned and walked away. Her back straight as a pine tree, without a trace of reluctance. Joshua stood in place, his fingers clenching and unclenching. They were clearly husband and wife. He never imagined that one day they would become like strangers, even turning into adversaries. But the sudden appearance of that divorce certificate flashed before his eyes, halting his steps as he wanted to chase after her. Back at the hotel, Joshua collapsed weakly onto the carpet, his phone vibrating incessantly. Jennifer had sent over 20 messages, the last one being a voice note. When he played it, her tearful voice came through. "Joshua, I went to find you, but you weren't there. You went to see her, didn't you? You clearly said you never loved her at all." Joshua closed his eyes. For some reason, listening to Jennifer's sobs, he felt nothing but irritation and simply turned off his phone. He walked to the window, overlooking the night view of City B, when suddenly he remembered 3 years ago. Back then, Letitia had just married him and cautiously asked, "Do you like City B? I grew up here." He merely responded coldly, "City N is better." From that moment on, she never mentioned her hometown again. The next day, headlines dominated the front pages of major legal media outlets. Shocking. City N's undefeated legend Joshua and City B's queen of criminal cases Vivian are actually married. The accompanying photo shows the two standing off in the courthouse hallway. Letitia ice cold, Joshua with a complex gaze. The news sent shockwaves through the entire legal community. So Vivian disappeared for 3 years to become Joshua's housewife. Is Joshua blind, marrying the queen of law and not even knowing it? Just a rumor. Can't verify its truth. Heard his first love was that pianist Jennifer. Vivian couldn't possibly be a substitute, could she? The public opinion exploded, overwhelmingly mocking Joshua, while Letitia remained silent throughout. Late at night, Joshua sat alone in the bar, downing one strong drink after another. The bartender couldn't help but advise, "Sir, you've had too much to drink." He turned a deaf ear until, in his drunken haze, he seemed to see Letitia sitting across from him, still gentle as ever, softly asking, "Joshua, was work tiring today?" He reached out to grasp her, but only caught empty air. Unbeknownst to him, he had long lost the most precious person. City B outside the High Court. Media crews had already set up their cameras and microphones. This was a high-profile commercial murder case. Renowned entrepreneur Gary was accused of murdering a business rival with a solid chain of evidence. But the defense had hired City N's undefeated legend Joshua, while the victim's family enlisted the recently returned queen of criminal cases Vivian. The first ever showdown between these two top attorneys left the courtroom packed to capacity. The trial began. With Letitia as the prosecuting attorney making the first statement, she stood at the center of the courtroom, her sharp presence accentuated by a black suit, her voice clear and incisive. The defendant, Gary, made 3 calls to the deceased on the night of the incident. Call records show that after the last call, the deceased's phone signal disappeared, and the body was discovered in the early hours of the next morning. She clicked the remote, and the projection screen displayed the defendant's vehicle travel records. His car had been near the deceased's residential area during the time of the incident. What's more important, she paused for a second, her gaze sweeping over the jury. "We extracted the defendant's DNA from under the victim's fingernails." The courtroom erupted in uproar. Joshua frowned slightly, for no other reason than this case being more challenging than he had anticipated. When it was Joshua's turn to cross-examine, he stood up and walked toward the witness stand, speaking in a steady tone. "The dashcam footage only proves that my client passed through the area, not that he actually entered the deceased's home." Turning to the jury, he continued, "As for the DNA evidence, my client and the deceased were business partners. It's perfectly normal for them to have had physical contact prior to this incident." With rigorous logic and compelling arguments, this should have been an evenly matched battle, until his gaze inadvertently swept past Letitia. She was looking down at the documents, her profile sharp and cold, with her eyelashes casting a small shadow under the light. For a moment, Joshua vaguely saw the Letitia from 3 years ago. She used to sit quietly by the dining table just like this, under the warm yellow light, waiting for him to come home for dinner. While he always ignored her. "Mr. Joshua," the judge reminded him, "please proceed with your questioning." Joshua suddenly snapped back to reality, momentarily forgetting the next question. Letitia looked up, her gaze colliding with his, the corners of her lips curling into an almost imperceptible cold smile. During the final closing arguments, Letitia stood up and slowly walked toward the jury. "The defendant claims to have had a good relationship with the deceased, but..." She took out a USB drive and played a recording from it. This is a threat the defendant made to the deceased in a private club 1 week before the incident. There were no surveillance cameras inside the room, but near the entrance of the private booth where the defendant and the deceased were, the surveillance captured a sentence the moment a waiter pushed the door open. In the recording, Gary's voice was filled with hatred. "I'll sue you if you dare steal my project again. I'll make sure you die without a whole body." The jury members' expressions changed abruptly. Gary didn't expect anyone to barge in. trying to intimidate and bribe the waiter into silence. He didn't think the hallway surveillance could prove anything either. Just having drinks together, he claimed. What the victim probably didn't realize was that the drink he had was his last. Letitia pressed her advantage. The chain of evidence is complete, the motive is clear. This proves it was premeditated murder, not an accident. She turned to Joshua, her tone soft but her gaze sharp. Mr. Joshua, the law won't distort the truth just because of a defense attorney's reputation. This statement struck like a hammer, shattering the unsteady tower beneath his feet. When the judge announced a recess for deliberation, Joshua sat at the defense table, his fingers unconsciously tapping the desktop. He had never been distracted in court before, but today his mind was completely occupied by Letitia, the composed way she presented her arguments, the sharpness with which she countered him, and that icy gaze she fixed upon him. Half an hour later, the judge announced the defendant, Gary, is found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Joshua lost the case. The media erupted instantly, with camera flashes going wild, and headlines quickly trending. Myth shattered. Joshua loses first case, defeated by ex-wife Vivian. First defeat. Joshua, will he lose confidence from now on? City N. Jennifer hurled her phone against the wall after reading the news. Letitia, how dare you? She clenched her fists so tightly her nails dug into her palms. She could hardly believe her eyes. Joshua had actually chased after Letitia all the way to City B, even losing the lawsuit because of it. She would never allow it. That afternoon, Jennifer secretly contacted several gossip media outlets, anonymously leaking. Vivian rose to fame by sleeping with Joshua back then. She disappeared for 3 years because he got tired of her. And now she's making a comeback for revenge. The leak caused an uproar across the internet. Hashtag Vivian climbs into bed. Hashtag Vivian returns for revenge. Hashtag Joshua Vivian marriage secrets. Hashtag. The topic instantly dominated the trending searches. Letitia's law firm's phone has been ringing off the hook, and a crowd of reporters is blocking the entrance. Determined to dig up some sensational news. Vivian, is it true that you married Joshua through improper means back then? Are you making this high-profile comeback to get revenge on him? Does your marital relationship with Joshua still exist? Will you choose to divorce him? Letitia walked through the crowd expressionlessly until a reporter sharply asked, has Joshua never loved you? Her steps finally halted. Turning slowly, she faced the camera, her voice calm yet resolute. First of all the various statements circulating online are rumors. Secondly, my marriage with Joshua has ended. I urge everyone to focus on the case itself rather than gossip. With that, she walked away, her back straight as a pine tree. That night, Joshua saw the trending topic and was filled with rage. Several names of potential adversaries flashed through his mind, but none of them knew the details of his marriage. He immediately dialed Jennifer's number, his voice chillingly cold. You're the one who leaked the story. His tone was resolute, cutting off Jennifer's prepared excuses before she could utter them. Jennifer defended herself guiltily. I was just stating the facts. Facts, he sneered. The fact is 3 years ago I was drunk and mistook someone. It was me who proposed marriage as compensation. She was never at fault from start to finish. After a brief silence on the other end of the line, Jennifer suddenly burst into tears. You've fallen in love with her, haven't you? Joshua didn't answer and hung up directly. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling window of the hotel, he gazed at City B's night view, suddenly recalling Letitia's South appearance in court today. Confident and dazzling, she was no longer the Letitia who would always wait for him to come home. The recent rumors have been escalating. Fabian drew the curtains shut, blocking the prying eyes outside. The office was quiet, with only the faint sound of keyboard typing in the background. These people just won't let go, practically trying to shove a camera down your throat. I'm sorry that my personal life has affected the law firm. Fabian waved his hand dismissively. Nonsense. I should be the one thanking you for coming back. But what are you going to do next? Avoiding them forever isn't a solution. Letitia turned her gaze to the floor-to-ceiling window, her sharp eyes seemingly piercing through the thick curtains to land on the reporters below. Why should I hide? The next day, City B International Convention Center was swarmed by a crowd of media. Letitia stood at the podium in a crisp white suit, her gaze calmly sweeping over the flashing cameras below. She hadn't hired a PR team, prepared any statements in advance, or even brought along a lawyer colleague. This press conference was a battle she fought solely for herself. Regarding the recent rumors, I will provide an explanation here. Her voice was clear and icy. First, my marriage with Joshua was never the so-called sleeping your way to the top. She clicked the remote, and the large screen lit up. The first surveillance screenshot is a hotel surveillance image from 3 years ago. Joshua was dead drunk and being helped into the elevator by her. The second document image is a hospital injury report, proving it was her first time that night. The third chat record shows Joshua's text message to her after he woke up. "I'll take responsibility, let's get married." The entire room erupted in an uproar. Letitia continued, "Joshua and I have been married for 3 years, yet he has failed to fulfill his responsibilities as a partner, emotional neglect, indifference, even abandoning me on the highway when I was unwell for the sake of his first love. Leaving me stranded in a restaurant when I couldn't move due to a burn injury." As Letitia spoke word by word, the screen simultaneously switched to an emergency record, patient Letitia, with multiple scalds across her body. Classified as a second-degree trauma, in the next photo, her back was covered in blisters, a shocking sight, and at that time, what was Joshua doing? The final photo popped up, showing Joshua carrying Jennifer, her fingertips slightly reddened. As he rushed out of the restaurant, in the photo, his eyes were filled with anxiety, his entire being consumed with worry for the person in his arms. One might mistakenly think Jennifer was his critically injured wife. This press conference not only invited journalists from major media outlets but was also simultaneously live-streamed online. The entire press conference revolved around the entanglements of 3 individuals. 2 were top-tier elite lawyers in the industry, and 1 was a world-renowned concert pianist. The sheer volume of information and the complexity of relationships instantly set the internet ablaze. Hashtag Joshua scumbag hashtag. Hashtag Jennifer green tea bitch hashtag. Hashtag Vivian heartbreaking breakup hashtag and similar topics dominated the trending searches. Outraged netizens commented, "Disgusting. Joshua abandoned his seriously injured wife for a green tea bitch. Jennifer, stop pretending to be fragile. Just a tiny red mark on your fingertip and you dare play the victim to steal someone else's husband." Vivian quit her career for 3 years to be his maid, and he didn't even know she was a lawyer, just kept it to herself. Don't change the subject. Folks upstairs, she didn't do anything morally wrong. Besides, even if Vivian didn't say anything, doesn't Joshua have a mouth? Jennifer's reputation has taken a sharp downturn. Not only is she labeled as a green tea, a term for a seemingly innocent but actually scheming woman, but netizens have also uncovered a timeline proving that she had frequent contact with Letitia and Joshua even before their divorce was finalized. Hashtag Jennifer the other woman hashtag. Hashtag Jennifer homewrecker hashtag and related hashtags continue to trend with overwhelming popularity. The official website of the piano tour was flooded with angry comments from netizens, prompting the organizers to urgently announce the cancellation of all scheduled tour performances. City N in the law firm's conference room. All the partners watched the live broadcast with grim expressions. "Joshua, do you have any idea how much damage this has done to the firm's reputation?" The managing partner nodded repeatedly, laughing in sheer anger before slamming a file onto the table. "As of 10 minutes ago, 3 major clients have already demanded to terminate their contracts." Joshua sat motionless, his eyes fixed unwaveringly on Letitia's face on the screen. Her tone was eerily calm as she recounted the harms, as if she were telling someone else's story. So, he had hurt her this deeply. Jennifer's phone on the coffee table in her apartment vibrated frantically, the screen lighting up and then going dark over and over. She stared fixedly at the caller ID, Joshua, but the phone kept ringing unanswered. Pick up, pick up." She grabbed her phone, fingers trembling, redialing over and over, but the only response was the cold, mechanical female voice. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable." Finally, the phone slipped onto the carpet, its cracked screen resembling a spider's web, trapping her within its strands. The agent's call came through, an angry roar exploding from the speaker. "Are you out of your mind? Picking a fight with Vivian? The entire internet is slamming you. The tour is cancelled. All endorsements are gone. Even the sponsors are pulling out." Happy now, Jennifer was breathing heavily, her nails digging deep into her palms, but the pain couldn't suppress the surging hatred. She clearly said she was going to divorce Joshua, yet she still clings to him. "I did nothing wrong." She suddenly grabbed the vase on the coffee table and hurled it violently against the wall, sending glass shards flying everywhere. "She stole Joshua from me. She ruined my plans. That bitch Letitia, how dare she?" Her voice was so shrill it nearly cracked, her once flawless makeup now smeared by tears, the eyeliner smudged into a mess like a crumpled mask. But just then, the phone screen lit up again. A new message popped up, exposing Jennifer's dark history. Having an affair with her advisor during study abroad, winning awards through under-the-table deals, Her throat felt as if an invisible hand had tightly gripped it, all screams abruptly cut off, leaving only rapid, shallow breaths. No, it can't be. Her hands trembled as she clicked the link, her pupils suddenly constricting. On the screen was a glaringly intimate photo of her with her married mentor during her study abroad years, accompanied by a shocking caption, "Genius pianist," or a homewrecker who slept her way to the top. Who leaked this? Who? She sprang to her feet, but her legs gave way, sending her stumbling back onto the sofa. The phone kept vibrating, with messages flooding in one after another. Jennifer's early competition scandal. Judge admits prearranged results. Piano community speaks out. Boycott disgraced artists. Jennifer's fan club announces dissolution. Each word was like a knife, stabbing straight into her heart. She clutched her phone with a death grip, her knuckles turning white, her gaze shifting from terror to something dark and icy. "Letitia, it was you, wasn't it?" she murmured, her lips suddenly twisting into a grotesque smile. "If I'm finished, then none of you will get away unscathed." Late at night, inside City B's Four Seasons Hotel, Joshua wasn't doing much better either. Collapsed on the sofa with 7 or 8 empty liquor bottles scattered at his feet. He grabbed his phone and instinctively dialed that number he had memorized by heart. His fingers trembled slightly. This was the first time in 3 years he wanted to call her on his own initiative. Beep, beep. After a long wait, the call connected. Joshua opened his mouth. He wanted to ask why, wanted to ask Letitia if she was okay now, wanted to ask how she was doing, but in the end, "Why did you never tell me you were Vivian?" he roared out, alcohol mixed with regret burning his throat. "If only you'd said it earlier." Silence filled the other end of the line. After a long while, a mechanical female voice came through. "Sorry, the subscriber you dialed cannot be reached for the moment." It turned out she had long set his number to automatically forward to voicemail. Joshua's hands fell along with his tears. She couldn't even be bothered to listen to his breakdown. Meanwhile, City B apartment. Letitia turned off the replay of the press conference and walked to the balcony to light a cigarette. This had become her new habit recently. Her phone lit up. Fabian sent a message, breaking news. It said that Joshua's law firm's stock price has plummeted by 40%. "Do you want to?" She swiped away the notification without hesitation. The night breeze scattered the smoke rings and tousled the stray hairs on her forehead. 3 years of marriage, wiped clean with a single press conference. How ridiculous. In the archives of the law firm, Letitia stood quietly between the bookshelves, her fingers resting on a yellowed case file. The case of Donald's intentional homicide. This was the first criminal defense case she took on 5 years ago. Just as she had begun practicing independently, the defendant, Donald, stabbed a coworker to death in a construction site dispute and was sentenced to death in the first trial. She fought tooth and nail to secure a reprieve from the death penalty, only to be grabbed by the throat and threatened by him after the verdict. "You bitch, if I die in prison, I'll haunt you from the grave." Now, this case file has reappeared before her. Donald killed a prison guard while incarcerated. The second trial upheld the death penalty, and he has filed an appeal. Letitia closed the file and said calmly to her assistant, "I'll handle this case personally." 3 days later, Letitia bumped into Joshua in the courthouse hallway. He stood impeccably dressed in a suit before the defense counsel's table, holding Donald's power of attorney. "What a coincidence," he said, gazing intently at her. "We meet again." Letitia sneered. "Mr. Joshua, since when did you start taking on cases for death row inmates?" After a moment of silence, he murmured softly, "I just wanted to see you." She walked past without even turning her head. "Oh, perfect, see you in court." On the day of the trial, Donald was brought to the defendant's dock in shackles. When he recognized the prosecuting attorney as Letitia, his dull eyes suddenly contracted. "It's you." Letitia calmly opened the case file. "Your Honor, we now submit new evidence." During his incarceration, the defendant Donald violently assaulted fellow inmates 3 times and was consistently involved in prison black market dealings. The projection screen lit up, showing surveillance footage of Donald sharpening a toothbrush before brutally stabbing it into another inmate's neck. Joshua stood up to refute. "These incidents are irrelevant to this case and cannot prove his premeditation in killing the prison guard." "Of course they're relevant." Letitia suddenly pulled up a psychiatric evaluation report. Donald exhibits significant antisocial personality traits with a high risk of recidivism, and on the day the prison guard died, she clicked the remote, and the surveillance footage froze on Donald stealing a police dagger. This was not so-called crime of passion, it was premeditated murder. Joshua clenched his fists. The chain of evidence was so airtight that he couldn't find a single flaw. When the judge announced a recess for deliberation, Donald suddenly broke free from the bailiffs and lunged at Letitia, shouting, "You bitch, if it weren't for your meddling back then, I'd have been out on medical parole long ago." Amid the screams from the gallery, Joshua rushed forward and knocked Donald to the ground with a powerful hook. Bailiffs swarmed to restrain the convict. While Joshua's knuckles were already dripping with blood, Letitia stood rooted to the spot. Her pupils trembling slightly, the figure of Joshua, who had come to her rescue at the courthouse entrance 3 years ago, now overlapped once more with the person before her. Due to the violent incident, the trial was temporarily suspended. Joshua, after receiving basic bandaging in the infirmary, noticed Letitia standing by the corridor window. He walked up behind her, his voice hoarse. "Back then, was it him too?" She didn't turn around. "Yes, I won the lawsuit, and he almost strangled me." Joshua felt his heart clench violently. He had no idea she'd been in such danger. "Letitia, Mr. Joshua," she cut him off, turning with terrifying calm in her eyes. "Did you take this case today because you genuinely want to defend him, or is this just another act of self-indulgence for you? Saying you took this lawsuit just to see me?" "Joshua, do you even remember why you became a lawyer in the first place?" Her words dripped with sarcasm and skepticism. Meanwhile, Joshua opened his mouth but found himself speechless, struck dumb by her accusation. When court reconvened, Joshua made a decision that left the entire courtroom stunned. Based on the new evidence provided by the opposing counsel, the defense requests to withdraw the appeal, Donald suddenly turned his head to look at Joshua, cursing loudly from the defendant's dock, while Joshua simply looked at Letitia and said, "You're right, some people aren't worth defending," the judge announced in court. The death penalty is upheld and will be carried out immediately. As they stepped out of the courthouse, a heavy downpour was pouring. Joshua caught up and held an umbrella over her head, saying, "Let me walk you." Letitia gazed at the blurry street scene in the rain and suddenly said, "Do you know why I married you back then?" Without waiting for his reply, she answered her own question, "Because that day when you stood up for me against Donald, I thought I'd finally met someone who would protect me forever." She stepped into the curtain of rain, her voice shattered by the downpour. "Pity that later, the one who hurt me the most was also you, Letitia." His hand was now severely swollen and throbbing with unbearable pain. Joshua ignored the heavy rain, quickening his pace to catch up with that figure. The relentless raindrops cascaded along the umbrella ribs, creating a barrier between them like an insurmountable chasm. I am injured. Could you please take me to the hospital?" He raised his bruised right hand, trying to make Letitia soften. Letitia's gaze fell on his hand, but she remained silent. City B Central Hospital. The emergency room lights were harsh and glaring. Joshua lay on the hospital bed, his right hand wrapped in bandages, a wound left from punching Donald. Letitia stood by the bed, mechanically flipping through the medical report, her voice as calm as if discussing the weather. "A minor fracture in the phalanx. 2 weeks of rest will suffice." She closed the medical record and turned to leave, but he grabbed her wrist tightly with his left hand. "Letitia," Joshua's voice was hoarse beyond recognition, "I just realized, I've always loved you. I just didn't dare admit it." His eyes were bloodshot, as if he were about to pour out all the emotions he had suppressed for years. "Jennifer is just an obsession, but you're the one I'm afraid to lose." Letitia looked down at his veins bulging on his hands and suddenly laughed. "Joshua, your love is so cheap." She pried his fingers open one by one. "For 3 years you ignored me, and only fell in love with me after discovering I'm Vivian." The sound of rain outside the window grew increasingly urgent, making her voice stand out with exceptional clarity. "If I remain just Letitia for my entire life, am I never worthy of your genuine regard?" Joshua was as if struck by lightning, the blood in the foretube flowing back halfway due to his violent trembling. At the corner of the hospital corridor, a man in a baseball cap put down his camera and made a phone call. "Miss Jennifer, we've captured evidence of them getting back together." The sound of shattering porcelain came through the phone, Jennifer's voice twisted with laughter. "Excellent. I want the entire internet to see this tomorrow." Letitia returned to the law firm in the early hours of dawn. Assistant Dave rushed over with a tablet. "Vivian, how is Mr. Joshua's injury? The whole internet is buzzing about you too." The screen prominently displayed trending topics. #Joshua injured while protecting ex-wife. #Hashtag Vivian kept vigil all night. The accompanying image was a blurry photo of her holding hands with Joshua by the hospital bed. The comment section was abuzz with excitement. "Reunited at last, Mr. Joshua, go for it. Vivian clearly still cares about him." Letitia let out a cold laugh and flipped the tablet face down on the table. "So now he's learned those underhanded tactics too." Contact PR and issue a statement. 1 hour later, Star Law Firm's official account issued a stern statement. Letitia lawyer's act of sending someone to the hospital was purely professional conduct, unrelated to personal feelings. Those who continue to spread rumors about reconciliation will face legal consequences. Attached at the end was the full version of the hospital surveillance footage. It clearly captured her expression of complete indifference throughout and her decisive action of pulling her hand away at the end. Netizens immediately switched sides. Joshua, does your face hurt? They clearly can't be bothered with you. Calling professional dedication lingering feelings, disgusting. When they were willingly cooking for you, you ignored them, now you regret it, just toxic masculinity. They don't want women who are ready to start families with others. They just have to trap ambitious ones at home, in the VIP ward. Joshua stared at the statement repeatedly before suddenly pulling out the phone and getting out of bed. The assistant hurriedly stopped him. Attorney Joshua, your hand isn't ready yet. Move. He tore open his hospital gown, revealing the bandages, and rushed into the rain with bloodshot eyes. The car sped all the way to Letitia's apartment building, only to see her walking toward a black sedan under an umbrella. The young man in the driver's seat leaned out, smiling as he took her briefcase. That was City B's newly rising criminal defense lawyer, who had publicly expressed admiration for Vivian. The rain curtain blurred Joshua's vision, washing away all his unspoken confessions. In the shadows, the hidden camera lens focused on this scene once again. Jennifer stroked the freshly received photo and chuckled into the phone. Tomorrow's headline is ready. Vivian seamlessly moves on to a new lover. Joshua abandoned with severe injuries. Her crimson-nailed finger traced over Joshua's rain-soaked silhouette as she murmured, "If I can't have him, then no one will. Let's all go to hell together." At 3 in the morning, Joshua's phone vibrated wildly. Jennifer sent a photo of her slit wrist, blood staining the edge of the bathtub, with the caption, "Goodbye, Joshua." He sat up abruptly, his fingers trembling uncontrollably. Despite having seen her true colors, years of ingrained responsibility still made it impossible for him to stand idly by. 20 minutes later, he kicked open Jennifer's apartment door, only to find her sitting on the couch with flawless makeup, a mere shallow cut on her wrist. "You lied to me again." His voice was as cold as ice. Jennifer just smiled, swirling her wine glass. "If I hadn't, would you have even come to see me?" Joshua turned to leave but suddenly felt dizzy. The water handed to him had been drugged. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Jennifer's distorted smiling face pressing close with her phone. "Tomorrow the whole world will know you ultimately chose me." The next morning, the hashtag Joshua Jennifer spent a passionate night together hashtag suddenly trended. In the blurry paparazzi photos, Joshua lay disheveled on Jennifer's bed while she leaned against his chest wearing sexy sleepwear. Letitia was immediately surrounded by reporters as soon as she stepped out of the courthouse. "Vivian, what's your take on your ex-husband meeting his first love at night?" She glanced at the photo and suddenly let out a light laugh. "I suggest everyone get their eyes checked. From this camera angle, you can see Mr. Joshua's pupils are dilated, clearly indicating he was in an unconscious state." She pushed the microphone away. "But it's none of my business." This calm "it's none of my business" cuts sharper than any accusation. Joshua woke up in the hotel to find the headlines exploding. He stared at the photo of his unconscious self, his gaze dark and deep. After a moment, he suddenly grabbed his car keys and rushed out the door. This time, a small voice recorder lay hidden in his coat pocket. Jennifer was still wearing that nightgown when she opened the door, her smile coquettish. "Miss me already? Delete the photos." Joshua directly turned on the recorder. "Or I'll sue you for drugging, defamation, and violation of portrait rights." Jennifer turned pale instantly. "You're recording this? Joshua, are you insane? For that bitch, say one more word about her." He grabbed her chin. "And I'll make sure you play piano in prison for the rest of your life." 1 hour later, Joshua's personal account issued a statement. Jennifer fabricated false rumors through drugging. Evidence has been collected, and legal action will be pursued. In the attached audio, Jennifer personally admitted to the entire scheme. The internet was in an uproar. "Damn, this has got to be the most toxic first love of the year. Why bother playing the piano? Such acting skills wasted without an Oscar." Mr. Joshua finally came to his senses. But Vivian had already dumped him ages ago. Ha ha ha. Serves him right for misjudging people. Some folks have eyes but can't see the truth. On the law firm's rooftop, the assistant cautiously asked, "Vivian, Mr. Joshua is doing this to stand up for you, right?" Letitia gazed at the distant neon lights and said calmly, "What do you mean stand up for me? He's clearly just cleaning up his own mess to protect his reputation." Joshua would never tolerate being manipulated by a woman like a puppet. Her phone lit up as she turned around. It was Joshua who sent a long letter, filled with remorse between the lines. Letitia didn't even glance at it, deleting it directly. Late at night, Jennifer smashed everything breakable in the apartment. On the other end of the phone, the agent coldly declared, "All partners have requested contract terminations. You've been blacklisted in the industry." She grabbed the car keys and rushed out the door, a crazed glint flashing in her eyes. If everything is over, then let them all go down with her. As for Joshua and Jennifer's entanglement, Letitia no longer wanted to deal with it. 3 days later, she had another extremely important matter to attend to, the North-South Lawyers' Peak debate, jointly organized by the National Lawyers Association, is about to begin in City B. Not only Letitia's affiliated Star law firm, but all renowned law firms across the country will participate at that time. This is a grand event. On the day of the debate, City B International Convention Center was abuzz with activity, every seat filled. On stage, Letitia stood behind the placard reading "The Law Above All," dressed in a black suit, her red lips sharp as a blade. Opposite her, Joshua wore a deep gray three-piece suit, his expression calm, representing the theme "Emotion is the foundation of law." Her assistant whispered in her ear, "With all the chaos outside, how dare he still show up? After all, his past credentials are still there, so inviting him is perfectly understandable." Letitia wasn't surprised. "Keep it down, it's about to start." The assistant pursed her lips, focusing intently on the computer, ready to take notes. The host smiled as he began, "Today's debate topic is quite special, when law and emotion conflict, which should take precedence." The flashlights in the audience suddenly lit up. Everyone knew this wasn't just an academic debate, but the first public intellectual clash between this legal world's embattled couple. Letitia initiated the opening statement for the affirmative side. The very essence of law lies in its exclusion of emotional variables. She tapped the table lightly with her fingertips. Imagine if judges showed leniency to murderers out of sympathy, or if lawyers distorted evidence due to personal bias. Would such a world still need laws? She cited several high-profile cases that had once shocked the nation. For instance, the drunk driving case involving the rich heir 3 years ago. Everyone knew right from wrong, yet public opinion overwhelmingly demanded leniency. Ultimately, the court withstood the pressure and imposed a severe sentence in accordance with the law, delivering the justice deserved by the victim's family. This is the true dignity of the law. The entire audience erupted in thunderous applause. When it was Joshua's turn, he remained silent for a long time. "I once believed in absolute rationality too." He suddenly looked up and met Letitia's gaze. "Until I was consulting the legal code for a divorce case and discovered that all the provisions stemmed from the same original intent, to protect the emotional contract within marriage." The large screen lit up with the first article of the marriage law. This law aims to maintain equal, harmonious, and civilized marital and family relationships. Legal statutes are the skeleton, but emotions are the flesh and blood. His voice grew hoarse. "It took me 3 years to realize that what truly matters isn't how many cases I've won, but..." His gaze burned intensely as he looked at Letitia. "I lost you." The room fell into complete silence, under the astonished gazes of everyone. Joshua stepped down from the debate podium and walked straight to Letitia. "I mistook obsession for love," he said softly, his voice nearly causing the front-row journalists to fumble their cameras. "Only after losing you did I realize, you are my only true foundation." Letitia paused slightly, her grip on the pen tightening. The Joshua who had spoken coldly to her in the study 3 years ago overlapped and then separated from the man now bowing his head before the crowd. She slowly rose to her feet, brushing past Joshua while leaving a response audible to the entire room. "Mr. Joshua, the law tolerates no assumptions." She walked to the center of the podium. Just as there are no second chances in life, the large screen suddenly switched to the PowerPoint she had prepared in advance. On the irreversibility of procedural justice, emotions can deceive, memories can embellish, but legal documents remain black and white. She clicked the remote, displaying the divorce agreement signed 3 years ago by Joshua. "Just like this document, once it takes effect, it can never be revoked." Joshua turned pale. A woman wearing sunglasses suddenly stood up from the back row. "Jennifer, what a touching performance," she sneered, removing her sunglasses to reveal a haggard face. "Joshua, to win her back, you'd even overturn cases you once defended." The media cameras frantically turned, but she suddenly pulled out a stack of photos and scattered them into the air. Fluttering down, they were all Joshua's love letters to her from back then. Shall I read out how you insulted Letitia back then, a rigid, boring wooden beauty? Joshua clenched his fists tightly. I don't admit it. Those letters were forged by you. Amidst the chaos, Letitia banged the gavel. You all witnessed. This is a classic case of emotions interfering with the law. She calmly pointed at the love letters scattered across the floor. When private feelings invade the public sphere, the truth becomes the cheapest casualty. Finally, she looked at Joshua. Her gaze is decisive as a judge's verdict. My closing argument is complete. The debate competition ended with Letitia's team achieving an overwhelming victory. Joshua stopped her backstage. Letitia, believe me, I didn't know she would come. Letitia gazed at him quietly for a long moment before suddenly smiling. Does it matter? Even without Jennifer, the issues between us remain unchanged. You only love the idealized version of me. I've always been me. Just because I changed my identity. You suddenly start regretting, suddenly develop genuine feelings. Joshua, your sincerity is so cheap. Has your own affection even deceived yourself? As she turned to leave, Joshua suddenly called out, what if I can prove it? She didn't look back. City Inn Notary Office, where sunlight slanted in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Joshua's slender fingers held a fountain pen as he solemnly signed the final document. The soft scratching sound of the pen tip against the paper was particularly distinct in the quiet room. Mr. Joshua, do you confirm transferring all your assets, including law firm shares, real estate, and investments totaling $270 million, entirely to the Vivian Legal Aid Foundation? The notary verified once again, without pausing. His pen glided across the paper in a perfect arc. Yes, I confirm. Stepping out of the notary office, his assistant caught up to him with reddened eyes. Her voice full of concern. Attorney Joshua, like this, what will you do in the future? Joshua paused, his gaze crossing the bustling traffic to rest on the distant spire of the courthouse, as if seeing his once ambitious younger self. 3 years ago when I won my first case here. He said softly, as if speaking to himself, I only had $500 in my pocket. Now, it's just a matter of returning to the starting point. He looked at his assistant and said, you go back. The law firm is busy right now. What about you? Aren't you going back? Joshua let out a light sigh. He still had something very important to do. At the entrance of the Legal Aid Center, Joshua was about to submit his application materials. He had just closed the car door. Still holding a bulging craft paper bag in his arms, suddenly, the screeching sound of tires violently skidding rang in his ears. Joshua turned around, his pupils contracting sharply. A license plate-less car, like an out-of-control beast, was charging straight at him. Behind the windshield was Jennifer's twisted face. In the blink of an eye, he instinctively shielded the folder containing the beneficiary's documents in his arms, but the tremendous impact sent him flying backward, in a daze. He saw the Jennifer inside the vehicle, her face twisted into a crazy smile. Let's go to hell together. Her lips seemed to form those words. Star Law Firm. Letitia had just wrapped up a cross-border meeting, rubbing her furrowed brow. Her phone suddenly began vibrating violently beside her. Vivian, Mr. Joshua has been severely injured in an attack and is currently undergoing emergency treatment at City Inn Central Hospital. She stood frozen in place. The assistant's urgent voice blurring into a cacophony in her ears. Half an hour later, she stood outside the ICU, accepting the critical condition notice handed to her by the doctor. The patient has a skull fracture and internal bleeding, with less than a 30% chance of survival, the doctor said quietly. We need a signature from the immediate family. Letitia stared at the spouse column, her pen hovering for a long time. Finally, she called Joshua's parents. The waiting time stretched endlessly as she sat outside the operating room, her gaze fixed on the digital clock on the wall, lost in thought. At that moment, the nurse handed over Joshua's personal belongings, a blood-soaked craft paper bag. Letitia stood frozen in place after opening it. Inside were the files of the legal aid recipients handled by their law firm. She flipped through the pages one by one, and finally, there were Joshua's property certificates and donation records. 3 months later, TP Public Interest Law Firm was officially established in City B. Under the incessant flashing of camera lights, reporters raised their microphones and pressed, "May we ask what motivated you to establish this firm? And why did you choose this particular name?" Letitia looked into the camera, her voice clear and firm. "Because the law is fair, it should always maintain balance, regardless of identity, status, or wealth." Thunderous applause erupted from the audience. But no one noticed the tall, slender figure wearing a mask in the corner. Joshua leaned on his cane, quietly gazing at her radiant presence on stage. For the next 2 years, they became the most familiar strangers in the legal world. When she recovered millions in unpaid wages for migrant workers, he was in the neighboring courtroom providing sign language defense for a deaf-mute defendant, while she pushed for revisions to the domestic violence shelter law. He provided legal aid to trafficked women in rural villages, occasionally meeting at bar association conferences. She would give a slight nod, while he averted his gaze, like parallel lines, forever close yet never intersecting. Late autumn, City and the ginkgo leaves outside the courthouse remained golden as ever. Letitia stood at the spot where she had been Donald attacked, and in a daze, she heard footsteps behind her. Joshua stood 10 meters away. The corner of his black trench coat lifted by the wind, they gazed at each other across a carpet of fallen leaves, neither speaking. In the end, she turned and walked toward the steps, while he lowered his head and passed through the archway. A ginkgo leaf landed on her shoulder as they passed by each other, only to be brushed away by the hem of his fluttering coat. City N in the dilapidated apartment building, a woman's screams pierced the deep night, a few lights flickered on. But no other movement followed. Joshua, when he kicked open the rickety wooden door, Joshua saw the domestic violence victim who had once sought help at his law firm, now pinned against the wall by her husband's choking grip, her face already turning purple. The police will be here any minute. He yanked the assailant away, shielding the woman behind him. If you stop now, it could count as ceasing the crime. You might still get a reduced sentence. The man ignored him completely. Grabbing a liquor bottle and hurling it violently toward them, Joshua turned sideways to block it. The bottle shattered, leaving streaks of blood on his shoulder. Damn it, who asked you to meddle? What if I beat her to death? So what? Joshua held a broken chair leg, staring steadily at the enraged man across from him. Behind him were the woman's sobs and a child's whimpers. The two stood in a stalemate until the sound of police sirens approached. And the man finally cursed and fled through the window. Thank you, Mr. Joshua. The woman hugged her child and sobbed. But, he'll come back, he'll come back to kill me and my child. Joshua wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and handed her his business card. It's all right. The police will take you to the station to rest soon. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. I'll take you to apply for a restraining order at 3 a.m. Joshua left the law firm and walked alone toward the parking lot. 5 thugs wielding steel pipes suddenly rushed out from the shadows. Who asked you to meddle in other people's business? What right do you have to interfere in someone else's family matters? The yellow-haired leader smashed a pipe against his knee, the sound of bone cracking clearly audible. They were brothers called by that domestic abuser. Joshua staggered and steadied himself against the wall, then suddenly laughed. He took out his phone and pressed the record button. As the steel rods rained down, he calmly stated, on the early morning of November 18, 2023, I was surrounded and beaten by Buck and his accomplices at City N, City B Supreme Court. Letitia had just won a cross-border lawsuit when an assistant hurried over and whispered a few words. She paused while removing her judge's robe. How serious are the injuries? Spleen rupture, intracranial hemorrhage, just completed the second surgery. The assistant handed over the tablet. City N news headlines were shocking. Renowned lawyer heroically intervenes and suffers retaliation. Now in critical condition, Letitia gazed at the storm outside the window, and after a long pause, said, "Send a bouquet of flowers." The assistant cautiously asked, "Should we include a card?" She shook her head, her fingertips unconsciously rubbing the edge of the case file. City N hospital. Joshua woke up in excruciating pain. The white chrysanthemums on the bedside table stung his eyes. Such flowers usually only appeared at funerals. Mrs. Letitia sent them. The nurse whispered an explanation. She said, "To wish you a speedy recovery." He suddenly chuckled lowly, laughing so hard that his wounds split open, the gauze seeping with blood. "How could you be so heartless, not even willing to give me your hatred anymore?" Outside the window, the last sycamore leaf was beaten down by the wind and rain. Late at night, Letitia's phone lit up twice. The first time it displayed City N Hospital. She guessed who it was, and after a long pause, muted the call. The second time was from an unfamiliar number. Upon answering, faint breathing sounds came through. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. Just before hanging up, she seemed to hear an extremely soft whisper, "I'm sorry." 3 months later, at the charity gala for legal aid, Letitia took the stage as the keynote speaker when the lights swept across the back row. Joshua stood in the shadows leaning on a cane, his suit hanging loosely on his frame. Her speech didn't falter once. The true law is not a game for the elite, but the last lifeline for the weak. Amid the applause, a waiter handed over a folded napkin. Unfolding it revealed familiar handwriting. "You're right, no signature." After the banquet ended, that figure also vanished without a trace. Letitia unfortunately encountered a typhoon while preparing to return, forcing her flight to make an emergency landing in City N. As if guided by some unseen force, she had the driver take her to Joshua's apartment building. Amid the mechanical sway of the windshield wipers, she spotted a faint shadow on the balcony, a pot of withered white chrysanthemums. She stared at the window for a long time before finally looking away. Joshua. The news of his critical condition came Letitia on the third day of her appearance at the International Court. At that time, she had just concluded a 7-hour-long debate, securing substantial compensation for fishermen affected by pollution from a multinational corporation. As she stepped out of the courtroom, her assistant hurriedly handed her a phone, the screen displaying only a brief line of text: Mr. Joshua has a severe infection from old wounds, and the doctors have issued a critical condition notice. Letitia's footsteps paused for a moment, but quickly resumed as usual. She locked her phone screen and calmly instructed her assistant to arrange the return flight. It wasn't until late at night that she received the letter in her hotel room. The envelope was plain white, but the handwriting was painfully familiar. She stared at the signature line for a long time before slowly opening it. The letter was brief, just 3 lines. In this life of mine, I've won countless cases, yet lost only you. The strokes remain sharp as ever, only the ink has faded more than before, as if the hand that wrote them had lost its strength. Letitia stared at those lines of text and suddenly remembered a night many years ago. The two stood, one upright and the other seated, the study enveloped in silence. She glanced at the files on the desk, then noticed Joshua's dark under-eye circles. The case was tough. He had already been working on it for 3 days straight. Do you think we can win this time? She asked softly. He chuckled softly, his voice carrying the familiar certainty she knew so well. When have I ever lost? Indeed, when had he ever lost? Watching the self-assured Joshua, she felt that spending a lifetime managing things for him would be just fine. But later, the unpredictable nature of life took its course. They still reached that point. She closed her eyes, folded the letter in half, then in half again, and fed it into the shredder. Amid the hum of the machine, her assistant pushed the door open and reminded her that the press conference was about to begin. Letitia stood up, adjusted the collar of her suit, and turned to walk toward the stage under the spotlight. Without looking back even once, years later, City B Law School's central lawn saw the erection of a new statue. It was a bronze-cast female figure, her eyes slightly lowered, holding a legal code in her left hand while her right hand extended forward, palm upturned, as if silently upholding some weighty conviction. The base bore an inscription: Justice never bows its head, Vivian. On the day of the statue's unveiling, the law school was packed with people, reporters, students, legal professionals, and even several Supreme Court justices attended. The unique feature of this statue, the dean explained to the media, is that the scales of justice are not held in the figure's hands but are cast into the base. Because true justice never needs to be deliberately elevated. Letitia stood at the forefront of the crowd, dressed in the simplest black suit, wearing no jewelry except for a small scale emblem pinned to her chest. A young student stood on tiptoe, peering curiously before whispering to their companion, "Is that the legendary female lawyer? I heard she won an international environmental case and even pushed for amendments to the domestic violence prevention law." The companion nodded, then lowered their voice further to add, "But I heard she used to be involved with Joshua, the so-called god of legal aid. Didn't he already? Sho, let's not bring that up. Those things are long past." The murmurs abruptly ceased. A white-haired elderly professor stood beside the statue, answering reporters' questions. A reporter keenly caught the earlier whispers and pressed further. It said that Ms. Letitia and the late Joshua were once the legal world's golden duo, even sharing a marital relationship. Is this true? The old professor adjusted his glasses, his gaze sweeping over the crowd before finally settling on Letitia's serene profile. No, he slowly shook his head. She has always belonged only to the law. Letitia's expression remained utterly unreadable, as if they were discussing a complete stranger who bore no relation to her. As the crowd gradually dispersed, she stood alone before the statue, reaching out to lightly touch the cold inscription. The setting sun cast her elongated shadow across the lawn, stretching all the way to the ginkgo tree at its edge. In a daze, she seemed to see a tall, slender figure standing under the tree, the corner of a black trench coat fluttering in the wind. Just like that day many years ago when they brushed past each other at the city and courthouse. But she knew there was actually nothing there, just like that long crumbled letter, just like those words never spoken aloud. She withdrew her hand and turned to leave. In the distance, the sunset was as red as blood. like a sigh from a departed soul.